All right. I think we're live. How's it going, guys? Welcome to the Blue Shifting, and welcome to... How's it going, guys? Welcome to the Blue Shifting. I think it just started, so I started over. Like, I watched the counter go over, and I was already going. Anyway, welcome to the first... Well, I guess I'll call this the capstone live stream. I kind of wanted to start wrapping up my series of visual novels with a little podcast for anyone who's interested. It gives people a chance to ask me questions and to join me in conversation. Tonight, we only have about 3 people who look like they're really interested in directly participating, so rather than doing the radio show-esque series I was planning, because I thought we were having a lot more initial interest, so I thought we were gonna, I might do some round robin type things, and that's probably what we'll do in the future. But for tonight, I'm just gonna kind of invite them in, and we're just gonna chat. If we go an hour, I'll be surprised. We're going to be brought together here just for this, and also I'm going to have a little bit of music playing in the background. I'm also going to have a slideshow. The slideshow's paused at the moment because I want to open up with a brief story before we really kick things off. And keep in mind, I'm going to be keeping an eye on chat in the comments of the video. I'm also going to be keeping an eye on the Discord chat. That one might be more closely watched just because that's where people are interested in joining up. That's where I'm going to see you. So if I'm sluggish talking to you in the YouTube chat, I'm sorry. But most importantly about this is going to kind of be the culmination of my feelings for Steins Gate. I've now played through all the endings, I've unlocked all the CGs, and yeah, I love this game. It's a real shame because I really want to be able to relive it and be able to play it again as if I could start it over. I've said it before, I said it in my video too, but I've been thinking about it constantly. And so I'm going to jump right in real quick, then I'll introduce those of us who are going to be joining us, and to the future audience, anyone who's watching this in the archive. And I also think I'm just going to re-upload this fully, because I've noticed the archives don't stay around too long after the live stream's done. So I'm going to start actually uploading the full videos of them, probably not too edited, just because that's a hassle and I barely have enough time as it is to do what I do. But I need to start off first with a story, and I hope it's something you can relate to. As you've known, I'm a pretty empathetic reader. I really immerse myself in stories, and it's not just visual novels. Visual novels are so great because they allow such easy immersion of giving you, they give you the subtle visuals and they give you the audio, but they also let you really immerse yourself with your imagination and putting yourself in the shoes of the characters, especially when you get to make choices in the game. I absolutely love that. As a kid, I always loved the Goosebumps Choose Your Own Adventure books. Those were the beginning of my love for visual novels, I would say, because I was hungry for them. I loved them. And as I grew old enough to where they became super silly, I kept wishing that there were adult versions of games, more immersive and choice-based like that. And I found some, but most of them once again fell short until I finally stumbled upon visual novels for the first time. And the details of that story I'll probably save for another time, but for this moment, I kind of want to share, first off, this picture that you're seeing right now, this very static picture. This is a bit of a surprise, and it kind of encapsulates a moment for me that highlights the reason why this visual novel is so special. If you were like me when you were growing up, one of your favorite book series, or at least a book series you read thoroughly, would have been Harry Potter, the Harry Potter series. I absolutely loved these books, and they were one of the first true dedicated series that I really just fell in love with. And I remember, because the first book came out when I was 9.5, and I read that book cover to cover, and I remembered when I finished it that I was turning 11 in a summer in a few months, like the next year. Because I finished it probably when I was 10. And I remember having that thought of what if I got a letter from Hogwarts? What if it showed up in the mail and I ended up being able to go to that magical place? And I remember during the summer when I knew that the letters would show up, I remember checking the mailbox every day, even though I knew it was stupid. I remember checking the mailbox every day and hoping I could see that envelope with the green ink on it, saying I could be going to Hogwarts. And the reason why that's so special to me is because while it was a stupid thing, it showed me the magic of those books and how how I became so immersed in them, I wanted it to be real. And I wanted to have that experience be something I could actually go through and like really know the world of magic. So it's dumb. And I think that oh hell yeah, Sean, you should be in the hot seat for the current moment. I'm gonna put you back real quick, okay? Sorry about that. he got in. Thankfully he muted himself, so it was very nice of him, but I want to bring them in all together. Especially since we're not doing the radio show quite yet, but listen. So you have to see I was going into the game because I got a slideshow, both of screenshots from the game and also CGs from the game, which stupidly took me a while to remember were in there. I normally don't look at them in case I catch the spoiler. But I went into the game to catch some screenshots, and the phone buzzed as soon as I got in, and I got one of those messages that has the weird tagline from the weird site, like the one that normally sends you the picture of the jelly and the doll's head, you know, the creepy stuff. It was from that, and I was like, I don't remember getting that in this part of the story. And I opened it up, and it was this picture. It actually was like just the phone picture, so it just showed Okabe, Kirisu, and Miuri, and the cake. And then I clicked on it, and it opened up to this whole picture. It actually had animations in it. And I was super confused because I had no idea what was going on. I realized that it was my birthday. And I looked at the date and time on the message, and they'd sent it. It was saying it had been sent the it's weird to say, but it sent like the minute before midnight of my birthday. So like the day before. It's had the date and time there of the birthday day. And and it was such a surprise and freaky that it friggin' knew my birthday. But it was just so magical because for one shining moment, it was like it was real. It was like it was real, and they sent me a message. And it was just that magic. Sorry, Sean, dude. I didn't realize you didn't have a mic. Anyway. I don't know. I'm super weepy right now just because I'm thinking about how stupid I am. But it's just this picture just meant something to me because the developers somehow put in some sneaky coding to be able to give me a birthday wish and to make it feel like it was actually a message from the phone wave, named subject to change. And just that's why this is such a good series. The writers captured the spirit and love of the readers. And so I just wanted to let you know that first off, that's the most important thing. The reason why this is such an amazing series. And why I am so in love with it. Anyway, I'm going to bring the guys in right now. I'll introduce them and we'll get started. Alright, so one sec, I'll just bring them all in. Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hi. Hello. Hello.
Right, so hello. Let's see, we got Mega Zero. I guess if you want us to call you anything else, try and let us know. I probably won't remember it.
Matt would be nice. I mean, just because Mega Zero X is like 3 syllables and a little awkward to say.
Okay, I'll try and write it down so I can remember. Alright, oh, pen, why are you not working for me? Anyway, we also got Just Ryu.
Yeah, Just Ryu is fine.
Perfect, and then Bulgari? Is that how you say
it? Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so it's Matt, Just Ryu, and Bulgari. Hey, so thank you guys for joining us. Like I said before, we originally were going to be doing round robin style, kind of like hot seat style. We're bringing people in because we had initially a lot of interest in joining us for this live stream, but I'm guessing people got busy, people just aren't sure, or maybe got cold feet because, you know, I mean, a lot of people have a hard time talking on live. So thank you guys for stepping out of the comfort zone. And and if you bow out, no one will blame you. So I guess first off, I want to say, like, what is like, what was your impression? Because this is one of the rare chances I'm going to get to be able to really talk to you guys directly. Hopefully, something we can do more often over Discord. But like, I want to know, like, why did you guys decide to follow my series? Like, what led you to it?
Actually, I believe I on the visual novel subreddit. So personally, I ended up seeing someone post about your series in a thread, and they're like, "Yeah, there was this really good one I found called TheBlueShifting, and he's doing Steins right now, and it's pretty good." And I'm like, "Oh, I'd be interested in seeing that." And I watched and I really liked it because I feel like you, compared to a lot of the people, actually talked more rather than just like reading through it and not really having a lot of personal input. You had a lot of things to say, and I really enjoyed that.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, no, I don't shut my mouth, but I think, like, personally, I have to admit, I can't understand even normal games, because I still think visual novels, they're their whole other caliber. They're not really just games. They're something else. But I think when I was doing my visual novels, like, I can't understand how people can play any games where they literally are just showing a video of them playing the game. Maybe if they're doing like a guide and it's like just a quick little like tutorial of like, oh, this is how you find such and such object, or this is how you fuse this type of persona. But when they're literally doing like a game back, like front to back with no commentary, or even if they're just like, they try to do commentary but it's super minimal, for me, it just feels so like, I don't know, like it just doesn't feel like it's a personal thing anymore. And that's really what Let's Plays or Let's Reads or whatever you want to call them. I feel like that's what's supposed to make them, that's what makes them special. But, you know, that's an opinion of mine.
I would say there's different types of LPs that are good at different things. I would say that most LPs probably generally thrive on, you know, the personality of their creator. So I would argue maybe some could just be very informative and it just be informative enough that it's its own thing, right? Just know so much about the like, you know, maybe it's a game, it's an MMO, and they're just so knowledgeable and they know all the things. Like that could be, I guess, on its own an interesting thing. But that, you know, so different people excel at different things. But I'd probably say most LPers thrive based on like their personality. Yeah.
Hopefully, I have something that's personality-wise that keeps people around. Out of curiosity, just for you, same kind of question. Like, is there any particular reason why you chose to watch the Steins Gate with me, or is it mostly just like the fact it was Steins Gate?
Well, for me, what I do is usually I watch Let's Plays of things that I've played and enjoyed.
Yeah.
As for you, I followed your muv-luv series first.
Oh, yes. I love muv-luv.
Yeah, and when I found that you were starting a Steins Gate series, I mean, I enjoy Steins Gate as well, so might as well just go through it with you again. I mean, it's like watching a friend play. It's very nice.
Oh, thank you. Oh, man. Dang, dude. I go right for the heartstrings. Thank you. Oh, you guys are going to make me cry again. You know me. I'm just a blubbering mess. But no, you guys are like telling me everything. Like part of me is always like terrified. And it's illegitimate. Like, it's going to be a thing where, you know, eventually I have to put aside these really big name visual novels. And I do think, like, I hope that I can give you guys more reasons to stick around and hopefully discover new visual novels with me and, like, kind of enjoy, like, the journey beyond just the ones that are just super fun. But I also understand, too, is, like, if you only wanted to come around for Steins Gate, like, I wouldn't blame you. There's a lot of visual novels I'm going to play, and I don't think there's going to be very many that are going to stack up to the level of muv-luv and Steins Gate. I really hope so. That's my big dream. Like, if there's anything I can do, I hope I can inspire someone out there who's far more creative than I am to eventually make the future visual novels of the caliber of Steins Gate. Obviously, I mean, Japan's been the wheelhouse of visual novels, but heck, if you've watched Crystalline or you watched through my Ace Academy, I mean, they're out of Canada, and I think that their caliber is competitive with Japan. One of the first times.
Yeah, no, there are certain, like, there's a rising English VN market that's been expanding, right? There's been quite a few in the past few years. Hanako Games is probably one of my favorites for English visual novels. Or Western visual novel makers, I should say.
What are some of those titles? I'm probably more familiar with the titles than the company.
So, like, Long Live the Queen.
I love that one.
Yeah. and also she did The Confines of the Crown, and I say she because it's like a single female developer that does these.
Oh, okay.
And also, what is it? Magical Diary. There we go.
Okay. Yeah, Long Live the Queen, that's something I actually hope to do a live stream of sometime. Maybe get some strats, because I've only been able to beat that game like a couple times, and every time I have to take the Lumen route, and I'm hoping there's another route I can learn how to do.
Oh, there's definitely other routes. Just a small thing to say. I spent 60 hours in that game. Gosh. I know, like, yes, there's a surprising amount of content you can uncover. And you're like, wait a minute, they accounted for that? And that's a thing? Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm not going to go derail this too much, but I did a screenshot let's play of that like 4 years ago on Something Awful, and it got, like, it was my biggest, like, internet celebrity, or obviously not super famous, but it was just a relatively small let's play on the forum, but it got like 600,000 views, so that was like my small claim to internet fame.
Oh man, I don't think I even have 600,000 views on my whole channel, so congratulations.
Well, that's a forum thread, and that's also, I think, counts people multiple times. They visit multiple times, right? So,
well, still, that's congratulations. That's pretty impressive. Maybe I should try that. And then, Bulgari, same kind of question to you. I mean, and the reason I don't want this to be sounding like vain at all, but honestly, like, I need to get a bead on like what am I doing right? What can I improve on? Like, it's hard. I've gotten to the level where like technically, like when it comes to like the mic and the recording studio and the camera, I don't have a whole lot more I can improve on. And so now a lot of it's got to be interaction with the community. What do I choose to do? How do I choose to do it? So thank you for giving me this feedback. Is there anything you'd like to add, like something that stuck out to you that made you interested in this series?
Well, I actually, just like Rio, I started following you in the muv-luv series. And, well, one of the reasons I got interested in your channel was first because you did visual novels, which is a thing that I really enjoy. And second, your reactions felt genuine. I mean, it's something that's kind of hard to find in YouTube if you think about it. Most of the things I found out there, I don't know, they seem like scripted or fake, but I enjoy your style. I think that's one of your selling points.
It's probably one of the only ones, to be honest. I don't have the pretty boy face. I definitely don't have the charismatic, like, screaming and making everyone laugh. I've never been the comedian. But that's part of what's good of your channel. I mean, it's kind of nice. Aw. Well, it's good to do something right. Once again, it's also one of those things too. Like I sometimes talk about, like, I have the dreams of like potentially getting the channel big enough if I started being able to do more cool stuff, like as it got bigger. But I do genuinely think, if I'm being really practical, that the fact that I'm so genuine and I focus so much on like this kind of like I focus so much on like deep story content rather than going for stuff that's going to be super ecchi or super high in comedy. I mean, I love comedy, but I tend to go for these more dramatic series, if you haven't noticed. And I think that's going to be something that ultimately is going to be a hindrance. Not that that's a bad thing, because I don't want to be known for doing a bunch of clickbait. I just want to be able to do stuff that I find meaningful. And so, yeah, like if that works for you, I'm so happy that I was telling my wife a while ago when I hit 1,000, she was just like, wow, that's kind of crazy, because like she remembered when I was super excited when I hit 50 subscribers, and she's just like, yeah, like what do you think about all that? So it's like, I have no idea. Like it's weird because 1,000 is so small for like YouTube standard, but for me it's such a huge milestone that I honestly didn't think I'd hit. So thank you guys so much. We're going to shift it now full-time to Steins Gate in particular. I'd love to honestly invite you guys to start us off with some questions. I know I've mentioned preparing some. I've got some good ones too, but I've had you guys do all the talking first off, so I'd love to have a couple questions from you guys, pretty much about anything. If we go too far off the train, I'm going to have to swing us back in, but let's see. Let's start with Just Ryu. Would you mind starting us off with a question?
All right, just the obvious one. What do you guys think about the phone system?
Ooh.
So I guess you'd have to be a bit more specific, maybe. Like, what do you mean by what I think of the phone system? Oh, do you mean as like the mechanical phone system?
Yeah, the choice system they implemented. They use it.
Got it.
They implement it through the phone.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, Blue, do you want to answer first, or should
I don't really care. I can just jump in. I think for me, I like the tactileness of it. A lot of visual novels, pretty much every one you have, you get text boxes that pop up, and it becomes very clear when a choice is going to have an impact in the story. And that gives you time to sit and consider and weigh your options. And while that's actually really good for doing something like a live stream or uploading videos where I can hem and haw and talk about my thoughts, it does kind of separate you from the moments in a good and bad way. I've talked about the most exciting types of interaction I've seen so far in a visual novel, I think, has come from stuff like Ace Academy, where you have a time limit on some of the more critical choices to have a strong influence on the story. In Steins Gate, what I loved about the phone system is that it allowed me to have that really special moment the first time when I think the first time I actually got to really do something with the phone besides like the scripted events was when we'd first done the time leap. And I was just going through like the holy crap, like Miyuri's been shot, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. And then it's like, he started to think, he's like, should I do something? Should I change something? And I'm like, out of reflex, I was just like, can I call her? I pulled up the phone, I clicked the name. It's something I'd kind of done before. But then it actually let me call her. That gave me that swoop in my stomach. I was like, oh, I got to actually do that. And then you guys told me that you technically, like, I'd skipped some content because I'd skipped, and I went back and played it, so I skipped the loop where you went through the exact same scenario again. I had no idea. And so the fact that I got to have that awesome, I call it the swooping, that real feeling of like, oh my gosh, the game actually responds to me. That really makes it, for my opinion, worth it.
Yeah. So for me, I liked it for the same reasons you accept. So when I played through, I didn't actually realize that it was asking me. So during Ferris sending, when it's asking you to send the message to, or possibly split off Ferris's ending, I should say, where you're setting it to whether you want to overwrite Ferris's D-mail.
Yeah.
Well, when I was doing it, so I actually accidentally, I just kind of did Susahas without realizing I made a choice. Right? I was just like, oh, I'm gonna go send it. And then I didn't realize there was any choice there, so I was just going through. I'm like, yep, all right, when are you going to send the email? Because I just presumed it was going to do that the email automatically, and it didn't do that. I was like, wait, what? I was like super confused. So that was, I wish it was maybe a little bit better at transmitting, like, hey, you can either actually do that or you can just not, because a lot of the times in the VN, it will automatically just do the phone stuff for you if you don't do it. If you don't just take out your phone. And I wasn't a huge fan of how they shifted that there, where it wouldn't do that.
Yeah, to be fair though, they do kind of correct that, where they let you kind of have your organic ending, which most people will probably be kind of pissed at because let's be real, most of the endings kind of suck. And then,
well,
go ahead.
So I actually really like Luca's ending, and I can talk about that later, but it's a really complicated reason, but I think it's really interesting in the context of all the other endings. But yeah.
No, I agree. And then and we will talk about Luca's ending for sure, especially because you bring it up and I want to bring it up, so we'll definitely go into detail on that later. But I think I don't know. It is kind of crappy that it does, if you aren't aware of it being a function and you don't discover it by accident like I did, you kind of do get shunted into a bad ending. But then after that, they do let you have the whole, they'll give you the indication of every time you can activate your phone. It shows the icon the second time you play through. And so the second time you get that better. But you're right. There is that glamour that's kind of lost when you accidentally make a choice you didn't know you could actually make at the time. So that is a downside to it. Bulgari, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, I like the phone But at the same time, I kind of hate it a little because, as one of the members of the YouTube chat pointed out, the requirements for the true ending were really hard. I mean,
Oh yeah.
you cannot do that without the guide. I like playing visual novels completely blind. I want to make my own story, kind of like you, and see where it will lead me. And having such a decision to be so obscure, I find it not very pleasing. But on the other hand, I find it quite interesting system that deviates from what's normal. Because it gives you so much more freedom than what you would otherwise get in other visual novels. Like, I don't know, for example, muv-luv, you only get a few choices here and there.
Yeah.
They affect more or less the story, but you always know when a choice is coming. I don't know if I can explain it good, but
no, you did perfectly. Like, as long as I'm understanding, I believe from what you're saying is that, like, in the muv-luv series comparatively, like, they were very limited in the choices, but the choices that you made were impactful, and you got to feel that right away.
That's right.
Awesome.
But yeah, there are some things like, for example, sending some emails and getting, I don't know, some background for your phone that you wouldn't get if you chose the other option. I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah. There's a lot of, like, things. I'm gonna eventually, because games I love. I love trying to get all the achievements for. So I'm gonna eventually go back. I still haven't been able to do all of that yet because I think getting most of the achievements that are not, like, simply completing stuff are about as hard as trying to get the true ending, where you have to hit specific conversations in exactly the right way. So that'll take some time, but no, it's like the true ending. I think the one thing that kind of stinks about the true ending, honestly, is that, like, you have to get those conversations just so, and as soon as you mess it up, it's over. Like, there's no way you can do anything besides reloading and backtracking. Though I have to admit, like, when I did go through it, the affection that was between Okabe and Kurisu really comes through a lot, like, oddly strongly, considering you pretty much get 6 new conversations. Like, you cover 6 conversations via text message with Kurisu. Like, those little conversations have a lot of meaning to them, especially towards the end. That kind of really, they really adds extra flavor, and I had to admit I appreciated it. It definitely made the ending more heartbreaking, which is why it made the twist in the credits, which that was a dirty trick. I literally thought I'd messed it up. I was sitting there recording, I was like, I actually went quiet for a long time, so it's like, I must have screwed this up again. I'm gonna have to start all over, and I don't have time. It's already like 1 in the morning, and then it's only interrupted, and I was just like, oh, thank goodness.
Well, yeah, now that you mention it, having those conversations with Kurisu, I think it makes sense lore-wise that why you would have the good ending. I mean, in that timeline, Okabe is having enough motivation to actually build the time machine into the future and send himself back a video message to save Kurisu. If he didn't have a strong connection as he does in the Steins Gate timeline, with all those messages, with all that relationship, I think it would be harder to explain for such a character to have developed such strong feelings towards Kurisu.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that at all. That's an excellent point. Dang, this is why this is honestly, like, you've just encapsulated, all of you, of why I wanted to do a live stream community podcast, because it's like, I feel like I catch on to stuff, but I miss some really cool things that I'm really happy. I'm glad you guys are just making this even better for me. I love it. Thank you. Actually, but while you've been with you talking, I hope you don't strain your vocal cords too much. I was curious. Do you have a question you wanted to bring up for us?
Wait, so was that towards Bulgari?
Yeah, to Bulgari.
Oh, I haven't thought of any specifically, but
it's okay.
I don't know.
You don't have to. It's okay.
I'll probably think one before this is all over. Sorry.
No worries. We'll come back to you. And if you think of one, you go ahead and just you can go ahead and interrupt, especially if you feel a lull in the conversation. But how about Mega Zero? You got one?
Yeah. So I have a list of things I'd like to talk about. I created like an entire like text document for this.
You and I alone could probably do this for 3 hours, couldn't we?
Yeah, I spent like I think 1.5 hours on mine.
Oh my gosh!
But the thing is, most of it is like 4 questions, but then me writing my thoughts about these for a while. So I'm going to go with one of the shorter ones right now, or at least my thoughts are a bit shorter. So what do you guys think about really the kind of concept that Timescape seems to have with time travel, in that it seems to always have like everything comes at a cost, right? So every time any change seems to always come with some equivalent baggage, right? So in the Alpha world line, you have World War III. In the Beta world line, you have CERN. In the Alpha world line, you have Kurisu dying. In the Beta world line, Mayuri dies. Right? Not just in that's like obviously the really big ones, but even like each individual, every individual, I guess, change to the past seems to always come at a cost. It's never free. So what do you guys' thought about that? Do you think it's and what do you think the implications of that on the true ending are? Is that world gonna be doomed by some third apocalypse? Is that just how it's going to be?
Ooh, deep questions.
I think it was more related to being a time paradox, if you think about it, because in the Alpha timeline, the one when the CERN makes a dystopia in the future, Okabe won't send the email that changes everything. So I think what the timeline was fixed, so everything would go according to the. Yeah, I know it may sound weird, being there other endings and such, but I think the timeline was like just created to reach the Steins gate. I don't know if I'm explaining this right. You have first Okabe sending the email. If he goes to the Alpha timeline, he won't send the email. So he must go back to the original timeline, and so he goes through the whole arc in the Alpha timeline. However, if he just goes back to the Alpha timeline and nothing else, then he wouldn't receive the video email. So he has to go to the Alpha timeline having enough relationship with Kurisu for there to be a message, so it wouldn't create a time paradox. I think that's why such costs happen, because I think that the real reason that he had to leap back to save Mayuri was because in that timeline he had to at least time loop once, since it was like some sort of causality. It's like Mayuri dies, so Okabe has to leap back and try again, and try again and try again until he gets it right.
Yeah, I think you've definitely got the concepts of the feeling down of it all, and it kind of like we have. I think what happens in any type of time travel, you have these abilities where effect can precede cause, which is normally kind of something you don't normally experience, and so it can be mind warping to think about. And that's kind of what you're explaining. Is you're saying like, based on the scenarios that are happening, unless you have certain key events occur, no matter how big or small they are, they end up leading to these conclusions regardless. And that also kind of heralds back to the causality issue, where like, because like certain events kind of had been already solidified and set in stone, they happened, which is why the Mayuri deaths happened over and over and over and over again. One thing I thought was interesting was I felt like causality in the timelines. This is one of my biggest like problems with Steins Gate. Like, I mean, it's not perfect in my opinion, and one of my problems is that causality felt very fickle. It often involved death of a character, but there were other events that weren't even remotely close, like weren't tied to causality. And like I feel like if you're gonna exploring timelines, some things would be locked down by causality, but I don't think all of them would be super noticeable. I feel like they should have. I don't know. Am I saying it's like bad that they didn't do this? No, because it probably would have been distracting. But it would have been fun, in my opinion, to see more examples of smaller things that were part of causality. Like,
Sure.
I guess we had some conversations that were like that, but it could have been explored more. Anyway, what were you saying?
Oh, so I was just going to say that with the so what we were saying is, I think the in-game explanation is that like the worlds have a converging point, right? All different timelines have a converge to a super important event, which ends up defining that world line, right? So the fact that all of the changes were big, meaningful things like who lives and who dies, I think was partly at least attributed to the fact that it's that just based on the nature of how Steins Gate's time travel works, or how the timelines just work in general, that if something has to converge on it, and if it converges on it, it's probably important, right? Like the entire world isn't probably going to rest on whether you got coffee that morning. It could, but
I know, but
you can always.
It did revolve around the Metalupa being in the back of a plane.
It did. You're right.
But you've got an excellent point. Like you're saying, like causality wouldn't really be too concerned about things that, in the grand scheme of things, turn out not to be super relevant. But it's just interesting. I guess the other part of it, that because I want to continue on your sayings, like you're talking about how everything has a cost. If you remember, it's hard to remember sometimes because it was so long ago when we covered it. But the beginning of the game has a very strong, especially the intro sequence. It really hammers down this concept of the butterfly effect, which is reality. Like, we see butterfly effect in stuff all the time, especially through history. Also, by the way, real quick, not to deviate, but Alexis Skyen in the chat has said that they like the timeline mechanics because they make the mistake of they avoid making the mistake of making it a multiverse and having only one active timeline that helps make it. As she says, it raises the stakes more, and I agree. It also, because you could take she does this. She kind of does the cop out like towards the end when she's told like, look, I literally have to choose whether you or Miri dies, and she kind of takes that like, oh well, just from your perspective I die, but it could be in another perspective where I don't. And it's like you could approach it like that, but there's as much evidence to support that theory as the theory that there's only one active timeline, and so. Like, I do agree that the idea of having a single timeline that's active that can be adapted and twisted is really interesting. And I feel like we kind of didn't really get to have the horror of those types of choices imprinted on us too much because we almost always had in the story the time leap machine. Like, it's when we really started messing with the timeline, we almost always had it. And so, like, Okabe was able to at least attempt to fix problems pretty much every time they happened. Like, I remember every time something would go south, I'd be like, to the machine! It's like, it would have been interesting to see how if he'd made a choice and then the time leap machine wasn't available and then he had consequences for it, that would have been a much more stark and horrifying thing to have to witness.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Steins Gate does what it does because it's trying to weave a very specific narrative, and in that narrative, it really wants to be focusing on its characters. And I think having larger catastrophic effects would probably distract with some of the story it's trying to tell, right?
Good
It's
point.
supposed to be more of a personal tale rather than Okabe himself doesn't really care about World War III or CERN. Like, he says this, I think, on multiple occasions. Like, I don't care about that, right? I don't care if this causes World War III to happen. I don't care if this really too much about CERN taking over the world. What I care about is like the people that are close to me, right?
True.
Like, what happens to them.
Yeah, and the effects you have are pretty drastic, and I like that. Like, oh gosh, we get to the endings. Like, you wanted to talk about the Lukako ending. Like, I'd like to go through a few of the endings and my impressions of them, and then your thoughts on them too.
Sure.
The Lukako ending, it gets my vote for the most pleasant ending, even though it was horrible and awful. Like, compared to a lot of the other endings, it was the one that had the least amount of despair. And that's because it felt like, despite like the terrible choices that were made and the horrible burden that Okabe and Lukako had to bear, I feel like it was pretty clear by the ending, like the final shot right after the credits, that they were able to find happiness, and that was a relief to me.
Yeah. So I have like this is one thing I prepared a lot for, and I have like a really, really long form thought. So I really want to let Bulgari and like Just Rio talk for a bit, because I've been talking a lot recently already.
Sounds good. Are there any thoughts, Just Rio or Bulgari, that you want to share?
Well, just to comment on a few things that have already been said, the scale was kept small, I think, in Steins Gate, as you have said, for good reason. I think it's good that they have set limits on, for example, how much the time leap machine can go back, how far it can go back to the past. Imagine if it can go back like to 65 million BC, it would be quite
little OP.
Yeah. So by keeping the scale small, they can focus all the story elements, and I see that in the phone system as well. Actually, when you get to the end, you don't get that many messages anymore. Even though it's only Okabe who's going through the problem that he has. I mean, imagine if he's sitting on that roof contemplating who to choose, and suddenly Faris comes in with some Chunibyo stuff message. It'd be quite weird. But yeah, I like the fact that the writers decided to they know where to focus the story. They know how to limit the scale of story, so to speak. As for Lukaku's end, I think I'm okay with the end. It's the route that I'm not so sure about. I felt that Lukaku's gender didn't really wasn't actually the main factor in whether the IBM 5100 was found. It's more like whether she broke it or not, rather than whether she's a guy or girl. I felt like the main point should be whether she broke it or not.
Okay,
yeah,
so
not whether the gender. Yeah.
You think they deviated a little too much, focusing on the gender swap?
Yeah, I mean, yes.
Which was kind of crazy to begin with, anyway. To be honest, like, I really doubt that changing your diet would actually change the gender of a child, but it certainly made for some interesting conversations.
As a quick side note to that, the anime, I think, made this a bit more, like, they kind of rolled with it more in the visual. In the anime, I think, like, they have more, like, Kurisu and, like, Okabe, like, this is ridiculous. We're just going to humor Luca with this. It's not going to do anything. So they at least, like, I guess lampshaded it in that sense.
Yeah, but you also get that wonderful hands down the pants scene.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I was like, this can't be real. They made a great clip for the channel trailer, though. I'll tell you what.
Good clickbait.
And Bulgari, do you have anything you'd like to add before Mega dives down the rabbit hole?
No, that everything I wanted to say has been said already.
All right, take us away, Mega or Matt.
All right, this is going to be my the equivalent to those really big, like, giant posts I'll make on random episodes. So for me, I think one of the really big themes of Steins Gate as a whole is the loss, and in more particular, how time travel relates to that loss, how it augments it, or how it's just generally handled. In that, so a lot of stories deal with loss, and a lot of stories deal with time travel, and there are losses that happen in time travel stories, but most time travel stories don't focus on the personal kind of level that Steins Gate does it. And I think that the various endings each have their own perspective on how you can deal with loss with the actual manifestation of time travel. I guess when we talk about the other endings, I can talk about some of my thoughts of how it works in those situations. But I think Luca's is particularly special in that it's essentially saying we're not changing our answer to how you normally work. Because normally when we live, right, if we lose someone we care about, like we have to come to grips with it and we have to move on, right? There's no other options. We can't, we don't have a time machine to try to stop it from happening. We can't just say, we can wish it didn't happen. We can't do anything about it. And in Luca's ending, essentially what happens is, of course, Okabe says, look, I'm not going to, this is enough, enough's enough. How many people do I have to hurt in order to try to change, in order to stop Mayuri's death? So he ends up having to actually accept Mayuri's death, unlike the other endings. And basically none of the other endings is Okabe saying, I have to let go. So I feel like in the whole narrative, it's interesting in that it uses time travel, in a time travel story, it subverts itself in saying, no time travel, no more time travel to fix things. It has to stop here. And so I think with Luca's, so what's I about to say? So with the actual ending itself, time travel is still used in order to get closure, which is interesting, but not to actually change things. That's it. We're done. No more changes.
Yeah. And
I really like that. I think it's nice to see kind of Okabe dealing with loss the same way that we are after, in a sense, being a time traveler trying to save someone you care about, but who's already died so many times. It's really hard to empathize with. You can feel it. You can sympathize with it, or no, other way around. You can empathize with it, but you can't really sympathize with it. But you probably can sympathize with, losing someone you care about and having to come to terms with it and having to move on, and with you and the other people who love that person.
Yeah. No, I think you've got some really good points there. It's each ending, you really do have to see Okabe face things. He faces things in completely different ways. And he has, like you said, unique things he has to give up in each one. If I can quickly just run through them, Suzuha, we saw the end of him having to suffer through the end of his sanity. Axis, you said in the chat, that's kind of what you like, is you liked her ending because you got to see the descent into madness as he used limbo to keep his friends alive. And then you have in Ferris's one ending, which, by the way, Ferris's ending was one of the ones I was most eager to look at, because you remember I had some real Titanic emotions with that one because of the concept of having to sacrifice her father and the memory she built with her father. It touched something personal for me. So that was one of the harder ones for me to pass up. So I wanted to see what would have happened if I had given in. And that was one of the worst endings, in my opinion. Because
go
ahead.
I don't want to interrupt too much. I just want to say, all of these endings, I believe, do have extensions in Steins Gate. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it should be coming, an English version supposedly coming out this year. Which actually further explores all of the alternate endings, plus does some other stuff.
Ooh, that sounds intriguing. I'll have to look that up.
Oh, it's Steins Gate Linear Bounded Phenogram. That's the name of it.
Quite a mouthful. Okay,
yeah.
Absolutely. Get another one I'm sure we'll have trouble putting on the channel, though. That's going to be... well, I'll probably round off the... we'll have a probably real conversation about that but for the end of the podcast. But anyway.
And we'll continue on.
So with Suzuha's ending, we see him losing his sanity effectively, losing his connection to humanity, because that one goes down some dark paths of thought, where he goes from just going through the motions to wondering what it would be like to watch Daru get hit by a truck, to realizing that he could rape Suzuha and no one would know. It got dark. And then in Fantasy's ending, we see how, because of the change that he decides to try and make to try and save both her father and Mayuri, he ends up altering his entire timeline so dramatically that he never ended up meeting anybody but Ferris. And so and he doesn't have any of the memories of the relationship and the childhood friendship they ended up developing anyway. And so he ends up kind of starting with nothing and having to rebuild his whole life, knowing that he will probably never meet or bond with any of his old friends again. And I was like, that's depressing.
Yeah, exactly. I want to let some other people get thoughts before I say more.
It's okay. Does anyone else have anything they want to say? You gotta. With talking to people like me and Matt, you might have to butt in a little bit. But anything you want to add so far, you guys?
Well, as far as sad endings go, Mayuri's ending hit me a bit hard because, well, yeah, you kind of, well, it's like Okabe just gives up on Kurisu and just says, no, I'm not saving you, and I won't save you. I want to save Mayuri, and that's that.
Yeah, I was like, oh, my soul, because like from the get go, I always had a soft spot for Kurisu. I think most of us do, and I love Mayuri, but man, that was the ending I played through very last because it was the one that took the most work. And you guys actually someone commented on the Discord chat, oh, he's playing Steins Gate some more. They didn't realize I was bawling my eyes out at the time because there's an altercation when when Okabe finally sits down and explains everything to Mayuri, and she's just like, I have to go talk to Kurisu. I have to talk to her. And so they have the embrace where they meet up on the bridge like really early in the morning, and Mayuri just starts crying and begging Kurisu not to go, and that she doesn't have to be the one that has to be sacrificed, and that she's scared and everything. And I was just sitting there, and I was just going through my mind. I was just going right through my original ending again of watching Kurisu die effectively by hitting the enter key, but then also having Mayuri like adding on top of the compounding feelings in my heart, and I was just a mess.
I was really sad.
Mayuri ending was my first ending, or my first, other than, I should say, the Paris ending.
Oh,
my first, I guess my more natural ending without accidentally going into another one.
Yeah, me too. I think I got Suzuha's ending. I don't remember if I got Mayuri's ending or Suzuha's ending, but yeah.
It's brutal, man. And then, it was still kind of happy. Like, that's the thing. So Mayuri's was kind of happy. I'd say, it's the most happy beyond the the true ending, because they do end up, like, I know they're happy together, and I know that they would find peace, but I guess, and then but we also so to explore the other ending. So like the Mayuri ending is like the really sad, but like he's like, that's the ultimatum where he like flat out tells Kirishima, like, I'm not saving you. Like, ugh, it'd be hard. And then the last ending, so we have the Lukaku ending, and then there's not really a Moeka ending. You just get like, but I do want to talk about a little bit. So I was like so fed up with stuff. I was like, as soon as I could go do the time leap after like we watched the freaking psychopath child come in, when Sai just knifed her and ran off. I was just like, get out of here, get out of here. But everyone was clamoring, like, oh, you should have stayed, you should have stayed. I went back in, and I went through that. Holy crap. That is terrifying. I love it as a story element. The idea of, like, a child you influenced swears swears vengeance upon you in the future, and uses time leap machines from the far future to leap back into her own mind as a child, and then, like, uses that to exact revenge. Like, I think I'd mentioned that a long time ago as a concept. I was like, wouldn't that be crazy if like an adult went back into the child's mind? And I think everyone just went like quiet, like didn't say anything, because like no one commented on it at the time. But I thought the idea was really interesting, especially because by being limited to like the little hops that you have to do, it kind of fixed the problem of like, because remember Kurisu talked about like sending your brain into the brain of a young you would be potentially disastrous because your brain chemistry would be so different. But if you did it in little hops like that, I could see it working. And that's just, it's horrifying to think of.
Yeah.
And like, how creepy her statements is like, it's like, I'm going to kill you in 15 years. You be ready for it. It's like, oh.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. just crazy stuff. I don't know what I can say than what you've already said about that.
Yeah, I think Sai's fate is one of the hardest parts of this visual novel, especially because it kind of paints it pretty clearly that even if you don't get super involved with like Mr. Braun, eventually she would have. It seemed like it was part of the causality that eventually she was going to blame him for something in the future and would hunt him down and kill him, because it seemed like no matter what changes were made, that promise was still a part of the system. And so it's kind of like knowing that, knowing your fate in advance would be really, really, that'd be one of the worst parts of time travel, in my opinion. Is like, because of causality, you pretty much know what's going to happen, and you're like, well, guess that's what's going to be.
Right.
Well, I understand why I would think Okabe has something to do with his father's death, even if he didn't have that much close relationship, because it was because of Okabe that they found the IBN 5100. And that's the reason why he wasn't useful to the Rounders anymore, and that's the reason why he really committed suicide. Not because he was found, but he was useless after finding the computer.
Yeah. Man, the whole Rounder situation, like, I love and hate, because the Mocha scenes, like, first off, jeez, those got really rough. I actually recorded a warning for that episode saying, like, things get kind of bad here, like if you're faint of heart, don't come. And then I was like, you know what, I think most of the people who are in up to this point, they could handle it. They'll know what we're getting into. But it was so visceral, and I think that was a good thing, because we know, as looking through Okabe's eyes, like, the reasons why he's doing what he's doing, and we know, like, his intent is good, essentially. But, like, to see kind of a real life struggle, to kind of see, like how would something like this happen in real life, I think it finally kind of hit those notes. Like, Fair's being chased by, like, the 4 degrees centigrade people, like, that was something like you see out of a TV show. The Rounders kicking in the door and shooting Mary, that was something out of, like, an action movie. You have all these like scenarios that just seem so bizarre and they felt very anime and, like, entertainment-esque. There was something really almost wrong about seeing an altercation between a guy and a girl, and having her, like, trying to resist and, like, appealing to neighbors who just kind of ignore it, and, like, to realize that while it was kind of depicting a kind of like it was meant to be reflective of a scene of a rape, and it was meant to be uncomfortable, the reason why it's so uncomfortable is because there are people who actually find themselves in those situations for that reason. And it's heartbreaking to realize that sometimes the neighbors just kind of turn a blind eye to it, or something like that. It's just like, it was so, like, there was such another level of emotion and, like, the harsh realities of life that was attached to that it was so real it almost felt detached from the rest of the visual novel.
Yeah, no, I have something I'd love to say, but it'd be a spoiler for another visual novel, and I don't want to do that, because I know... Please, no, because I'm sure I'm not going to... No. I'm not going to do that. I was just saying that I can't... Oh, man, I if you ever read this visual novel, I can say some things. It's, yeah, but right now I'm going to say I understand for sure what you're getting at. There's, particularly when a lot of fictional mediums have often there's a good barrier you can have. Say, well, this is, far enough that I can't. Again, you can empathize, maybe, but you can never, not really sympathize. But then once it gets, like, to a certain level of uncanny valley, it can be really uncomfortable, and it's really interesting to explore that.
And to tie it all together too, it's like, not only are we having this very visceral confrontation, but at the same time, in the back of my mind, and in a conversation a few minutes later, like, you and Kirisu are talking about the reality of the fact that you might have to kill her. It's like, like, there's a, like it makes you kind of bring up these whole ideas of, like, me as a person. Me. First off, could not physically do that, I'm sure. But if it were down to it, like if my life and the lives of my friends were on the line, could I actually confront and possibly kill somebody? Even if I knew if I failed, I would be condemning my best friend to death. And I don't know, like I don't think any of us can really know the answer to that question, because how could you possibly know until you're confronted with that?
And just to bring this back to a conversation we had earlier, I guess the fact that that you mentioned you wish maybe it could explore some other sort of things, but I feel like this is one of the examples where the work is stronger because it is very grounded, and that it sticks with a very as Jestriel said, like a very small. They know what story they're going to tell. They don't expand it too much because Steins Gate, overall, like they're not just like killing people left and right. It's not like you're going on like giant killing sprees. The fact of like the protagonist saying they might have to kill someone is like very, it's still humanized. It's still like, whoa, what is happening here? That's so, wrong, which you wouldn't get if you were in a more like over the top thing where you've already killed, X number of people, and what is another one to add to the list?
Oh yeah, exactly. No, you've got it. And so unfortunately, time always slips away so fast from us. We're actually already at an hour, and I don't want to go too much longer because I know you guys have lives and everything. But I'm gonna round off with like one or two questions of my own. But before we do that, just for you and Bulgari, I want to know: is there anything else you want to add to this part of the conversation before we change gears?
Nah, everything has already been said, I think.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. So it's funny because I've got a whole list of stuff, and like I always assume I'm gonna need every scrap of like my own material to make these things flow. But like seriously, like you guys have been fantastic. I thank you so much for spending the time with me and like really being able to hash this out.
Yeah, no, it's been really fun.
No problem.
So I've got two questions I want to ask real quick. One kind of on the more serious side, because something I'm curious about, and then we have to end with a really fun one. So the first one and the more serious one, I think, as far as the visual novel and the writing goes, I don't know if you guys, I think I've expressed this before. One of my big pastimes personally is writing. And it's like I've written some novels, never been published or anything, obviously, but like I've actually completed a few novels back from in high school and early college. They're garbage, but it was an accomplishment I was very proud of. And then and I hope to be able to write in the future. The more time I spend with visual novels, the more I'm hoping that someday I can be a part of a group of people who can make a visual novel. So I'm curious, when it came to the science of Steins Gate. Well, science and quote science, because there is a lot of pseudoscience in here. They have to work with pseudoscience considering what the topics are. But was the science approachable for you? Because I'm guessing most of you aren't super involved in physics or chemistry or anything like that. So was the science something that you were like able to follow despite not having a background in such topics?
I think they did a pretty good job at explaining things. I mean, I'm really not, that's not my field of expertise, but I think everything related to how time travel works was explained pretty well at the beginning with that Kurisu scene when she just talks down to Okabe.
Yeah.
And well, for the rest of the things, I just for most part, I just believe them as part of the narrative because time travel is a subject that it's kind of hard to make real, to feel real, at least as real as Steins Gate does.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it did a good job at explaining things.
Good.
Jestriel, do you want to answer before I take a shot?
Okay. Well, for me, out of the fields of science, I think I prefer physics the most. So I have no problem with Steins Gate's physics, so to speak.
Nice.
Then what did I say? yeah, I lost my train of thought
It's
there.
okay. Do you? Out of curiosity, are you pursuing physics as like a higher education, or is it just something that you easily grasped as you went through your usual your Common Core classes?
Yeah, it's something that I grasp quite easily. Currently, I'm taking computer science.
Okay, nice.
So yeah.
Oh man, I'm glad because like that was one of the things that I studied in college, and like as you guys probably heard, I expounded upon a lot. But I did feel
Yeah.
like in like when I was editing and stuff, I was just like, I wonder how everyone else saw this. And so Matt, did you have some thoughts about this as well?
Sure. So my current background is also computer science. I'm going for a PhD in computer science right now.
Oh,
But
congratulations.
it's so for me, like the physics stuff, I don't know a whole lot about physics, right? I know stuff about computer science, but once you get to the physics territory, I don't really know. So when I was going through the first time, I just presumed, like, I didn't know, like, they explained everything well enough. I just presumed they were making up for a lot of it their own, like, pseudoscience. I'm like, sure, that works, right? They can, use whatever narrative and stuff. And it wasn't until, I guess, exploring it, years after I originally played Steins and watching you explain things, like, wow, that's interesting how I guess grounded in some reality, some real, at least some real topics in physics it was, which I didn't realize when I was first going through. Like when I was first reading through, I'm like, wait a minute, does this email use SMTP, which is or Simple Mail Transfer Protocol? The emails confused me because I'm like, wait a minute, but if it goes into the past, when does the timestamp get added? So that was like the question that was going through like my mind, but I'm just like, and I'm like, I'm just presuming that they're going with whatever. So I think they explained it pretty well. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, yeah. I'm convinced that at least they if they didn't have someone who was directly writing who had a background in like in physics, at least like at college level, they at least had a consultant because
Right.
they went far beyond the typical that you see for fiction whenever they do if you do time travel. I mean, if you ever watched Doctor Who, they have no grounds for science at all in that show. Like really,
Yeah.
and that's fine. Like it makes a great story, but Steins Gate really goes for the idea that like if time travel is real, this could be a reality. Like this is how it probably work, kind of idea, and that's really fun. Oh man, I have so many questions, but I do think we need to round this off. So real quickly, as we all know, as cliche as it is, like waifus are a thing. Oh wait, just Ria, you have a quick point to make?
Oh yeah, just for me when I was going through, I didn't really try to separate what was science or pseudoscience. I think the most important thing was the rules that they set up in their own universe, whether they actually follow through on it. Yeah, so I think that was done pretty well.
Oh yeah, that's an important thing. I think that's actually. I mentioned Brandon Sanderson. He's a fantastic author. I love reading. If you have a chance, I recommend reading his stuff too. But the reason why I like his stuff is that in his worlds, he has rules, and then the rules are set, and you know what the rules are. And so when you get surprised by characters, it's because they come up with creative ways to use the rules rather than just arbitrarily breaking them. Kind of like that. Like a good comparison is if you watch Lord of the Rings and you have Gandalf. He's a wizard. What can wizards do? I don't know. He just waves a stick around and makes things happen when it's convenient. What are his limitations? Right. Who knows? He just kind of died, but then didn't. And so, like, you have these, like, and that makes it so ambiguous. It's hard to really feel excited about magic in that world. But when it comes to magic in Brandon Sanderson's books, or when it came to time travel in Steins Gate, I could get excited about it because it had established rules that they stuck with. And if they found ways around the rules, it was explained in a way that was consistent with what we'd known from the beginning. Which is why, like, the true ending is so fun. Because with a Suzuha from that world line coming in with a functional time machine that can go forward and back, it still was able to not break the rules that they'd established from the beginning, where causality had a lot to do with observation and had a lot to do with all these like different dynamics of things. Obviously not perfect. I'm sure there's little gaps and loopholes, but just really, you had a fantastic point there. Thank you so much for taking the time to share that. Does anyone else have any last minute comments before I move to the final question?
I have too many. So I'm gonna probably say no.
All right.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, and I do agree. Like, there's a lot more stuff I feel like I could talk about. maybe we can continue conversations like on private or in the chat. I'm gonna have the chat for like I called it Steins Gate After Party. I'd love to hear some of your notes put down there, just Matt and anybody else who has thoughts on it. I still want to hear those things, but for the purposes of this podcast, we really should probably come to a conclusion. So the last one, I was saying before, it's silly and like it's always like joked about online, but I have to ask, in the name of waifus in general, of all the waifus who are present here, is there any that you've considered that be your personal favorite for the series?
That's a really hard choice.
Yeah, it is.
It's such a dumb choice too.
I mean, excluding Kurisu or re-include?
Okay, so maybe we should exclude Kurisu because she's fantastic and perfect in every single way. And although there may be people who disagree with that, I think for the stimulating of conversation, let's say Kurisu is out. Who else is your favorite? Like the one you'd want to get to know and would see yourself like being like, yeah, this is the person I could easily get along with.
Well, I think that Suzuka is a pretty nice girl. If you think about it.
She's also pretty.
That's completely right. But yeah, Suzuka would be my pick.
So Burgery says Suzuha. Is anyone else on the Suzuha train, or do you guys have some other thoughts?
I'm gonna get on the Luca train, I guess.
Luca. I personally think I would also like Okabe. Like, it would take time for me because I'd be like, I would still have the whole idea of like, I'd known this person my whole life as a guy. It'd be very hard to switch off that switch tracks in my head because, I mean, to be honest, Luca looks very similar either way.
Well, I'll just list out my order of favorite characters.
Mm-hmm.
Okabe is my favorite, I think.
Nice.
Right, and then Mayuri, then Kurisu, then Daru, I think.
Daru.
In terms of people I like to hang out with the most, I think.
Daru's someone he's like the person I'm most qualified to do a if I ever decided to go cosplay. But the problem is, like, unless I was with a bunch of other people who were cosplaying Steins Gate, I would just look like myself, and so that's not the best of cosplays. Man, Daru would be fun. Despite his constant perverted comments, he would be he'd be a hoot. I think for me, it's honestly Ferris. Like, at first she was so cringy to me, but like as I went on, like she grew on me because like I was like, she's a clever person and she's funny. But she's also like super manipulative, which on the same way, it's like Ferris is like I find someone who could be that manipulative like terrifying and also impressive. So I would have to say Ferris, despite the fact that I would be such a bad rail netter that she'd probably never give me the time of day.
I would like to point out that we all had like different answers to that question, and I think that's one of the strengths of Steins Gate is that it has a cast of characters that is really likable. Generally speaking, right? Like there's like a lot of games, you know, there might or visual novels or books or television shows or anything. There might be a character or two characters or even three characters you like, but often it's not going to be like the whole cast. Like when you get asked your favorite character, you might be able to like limit to a couple or three, but like Steins Gate, it's really hard because you have to think about it because you like the entire cast so much.
I agree, absolutely. One of the many indicators of the strength and power of this visual novel and why it still inspires people today. So many people talk about how inspired they are, and the fact that we can have Steins Gate Zero come out as a game and then shortly after the anime and have it be trendingly successful. It's a testament to me to the strength of Steins Gate as a story, and one of the reasons why I'm so very, very happy that I got to play it, and I'm so glad that I was able to play it blind, and because I wanted to watch the anime before I had access to the visual novel, but I never had a way of watching it legally, and I really don't like trying to stream illegally personally. Just I don't like it. And so I'd been waiting to watch it. I hadn't had a chance to watch it, and then I saw the visual novel pop up on Steam, and I was like, oh, I'm totally playing that. And I'm so glad I got to. And also, I'm just glad that it's brought some of us together. I mean, a lot of you guys came on board the channel looking through my muv-luv, but like we all kind of got bonded across Steins, and eventually we'll be able to do another podcast like this when muv-luv ends. Boy, whenever that happens.
I mean, I still need to catch up on your muv-luv series. I've been busy enough that I could not follow both muv-luv and Steins at the same time for the past couple months.
Oh man, it's getting real. Well, actually, no, it's been real for a while. I'm really happy that the one I'm doing after Steins Gate is going to be a much more lighthearted series, like Crystalline's turning out to be, because I'm going to do therapy after muv-luv Alternative's over. Holy crap! But anyway, so thank you guys so much for being here today. Honestly, it's been so much fun being able to hear your voices, and I hope we can keep doing this more. Thanks for taking the time. I know it's not the most comfortable thing jumping on and doing a live stream like on a whim when you don't do this very often. So thank you so much for spending your time with me tonight.
I mean, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
thanks.
It really was.
Good. That means hopefully I'll see you around next time. But unfortunately, we do have to wrap this up. So anyway, to those in our audience or in our post audience, because most of the people who see this will probably be seeing this tomorrow, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you guys so much for being part of the channel. I keep saying it, and I mean every second of it. You guys are what make this channel so great. It's the reason why I've been able to keep this up so long. It gives me the motivation to be consistent, and consistency is the biggest part of something like a YouTube channel. So I thank you so much for doing that, and let's keep it up. Let's see how many more great stories we can discover together. And until the next time you see me, or whatever you see me in next, I'll see you there. And we'll close off now. Bye, guys.